What's up with Bitcoin? It's down, dropping to its lowest level since January after China announced a crackdown on cryptocurrency mining. Is it, as stated by Beijing, about going green and cooling it in the nation that's home to an estimated 2/3 of the energy-sucking giant computer servers that create those virtual currencies? Or is it about reining in a cottage industry that is out of not only Beijing's control, but central banks and regulators the world over? Central banks that are trying to come up with their own virtual currencies. What does that mean, though? Bitcoin's now been around for years. What is it exactly? Money like any other? An innovative way for the little guy to take back control from the high-ups who track and control our every transaction in this digital age? Or a scam to launder and dodge tax? Some even might say a fool's game that's an even bigger pyramid scheme than the housing bubble of the early 2000s, when the trick was to flip properties and not be the one carrying the deed the day the bubble burst. Truth is, many, including yours truly, still don't know. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at cryptocurrency at a crossroads. With us, Jean-Claude Trichet, former president of the European Central Bank. Welcome back to the show.
It's a pleasure.
We're also pleased to welcome Manuel Valente, Director of Research and Analysis at CoinHouse, which is
a French company dedicated to trading cryptocurrencies.
All right, thank you for being with us. And from Bristol, Susanna Streeter, Senior Investment and Market Analyst at the investment platform Hargreaves Lansdowne. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you on the program.
The France 24 debate where you can join the conversation, and you have on Facebook and Twitter, #F24debate. Our story does not begin at a hydroelectric plant in China's Sichuan province, but in Dubai. On Wednesday, there was the launch of the Bitcoin Fund, a first for the Middle East, a 28% drop in value. This Bitcoin Fund is just one of these funds that are now making their way around the world, traded in cryptocurrencies. And if there was a 28% drop in value just the week prior in the value of Bitcoin, well, that's not a problem, says the company's founder.
The good news is when we announced our listing in Dubai, Bitcoin was 60,000, and I said the best thing for Dubai would for us to have a significant correction into our listing. So today at 32,000, we're very excited because when we hit an all-time high, our investors and our clients and our friends will have double their money.
It's gone down, so it's going to go up again, so everybody's going to make a lot of money. I know that in financial journalism parlance, that can be accused of being what we call bubble vision. Is that a case of bubble vision we just heard?
I think so. And I think really that we should not use the expression cryptocurrencies, because we are not speaking of cryptocurrencies. We are speaking of crypto assets. Currency must have the characteristics of a good currency. And the characteristics of a good currency are very simple. It must be a unit of account, a unit of exchange, and of course a good store of value. What we are speaking of are not good stores of value, obviously, when you go down, up and down, up and down. So it's not really a currency. I can accept the qualification of crypto assets with a lot of course, of comments that I stand ready to have on the crypto assets that we have in front of us at the present moment.
So the question, and I'll put it to all three of you. Let's see if we'll play a little game here. Sorry if there's a pop quiz, Manuel, but everybody in the newsroom's been asking all day, what exactly is a cryptocurrency?
I would agree definitely with Mr. Trichet. We can really talk about crypto assets and not really about cryptocurrencies. So what is Bitcoin? I would say that Bitcoin is a global network for storing value and exchanging value, right? So a global network which is comprised of thousands of computers linked together into a digital network, and which allow people, everyone who wants to access this network is able every day to actually deliver transactions between anyone. So, and this network has a series of technical innovations that make it very interesting and very valuable. First of all, it's fast. A Bitcoin transaction is going to require about 10 minutes to be settled on the network. So that's much faster than existing banking networks. A Bitcoin transaction is extremely secure. It's much more secure than using, for instance, your credit card on any e-commerce website. And a Bitcoin is also valuable because it's scarce. There is a finite number of Bitcoins. We will never reach a limit of 21 million units. So that also gives it a lot of value. But finally...
Who defined this 21 million units?
This is defined by the actual source code of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is really a program.
Some say made by a Japanese man? And
we don't know actually who he was. We only know his pseudonym, who was Satoshi Nakamoto. His real name is actually unknown, but it actually doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the real interesting and most innovative characteristic of Bitcoin is that it's totally decentralized. That means that behind Bitcoin, there is not a bank or even a central bank, there is not a company, or there's not even a single individual. It's just a network which just lives by itself, it's autonomous, and we call it decentralized. And that's basically what the real value of Bitcoin is.
Susanna Streeter, what's your definition of Bitcoin?
Well, I think that's been explained extremely well by our previous guest. And I think what is very interesting with the development of Bitcoin and other currencies with their own blockchain networks is the potential for blockchain technology, which has already been used across a huge range of industries. What has already been highlighted by Jean-Claude Trichet is the very fact of the volatility of Bitcoin, which means that it is not a reliable store of value because it's simply so volatile. And that really is at the heart of the dangers surrounding cryptocurrencies. There have been an awful lot of retail investors who ploughed into crypto over the past year, from mums in the playground with their crypto wallets to first-time investors. Some of them, around 14% in the UK, who hold crypto assets are actually borrowing to invest in this very volatile asset. And that is extremely concerning because ultimately we don't know what the final use case of Bitcoin will be. There are thousands of coins and tokens out there. Who knows which one will really become the most popular? And yes, I understand that there's a finite supply of Bitcoin, but also we have rivals such as Ether on the Ethereum network, for example. And there's been so much speculation about that. There are currencies, so-called coins, which have started as a joke, like Dogecoin, and been fueled by speculation on social media. It is this which is the problem. You're getting influencers with a huge amount of power who are whipping up frenzy around certain coins. And people are ploughing in with their life savings without really knowing what they're investing in. So that is the real danger surrounding this.
The real danger surrounding this, the Basel-based Bank for International Settlements, which is owned by the world banks of the central banks of the world, it's taking a dim view to these cryptocurrencies. I'll read you a statement they put out earlier this week saying it's clear that cryptocurrencies are speculative assets rather than money, and in many cases are used to facilitate money laundering, ransomware attacks, and other financial crimes. Bitcoin in particular has few redeeming public interest attributes when also considering its wasteful energy footprint. Jean-Claude Trichet, again, I ask, is this some kind of a pyramid scheme?
I am totally, of course, aligned with what the BIS said. And I trust that what remains absolutely abominable, if I may, is that in most countries of the world, in most continents of the world, you have no rules and regulations. So it is an instrument which can be utilized by money laundering, by financing of terrorism, which can be utilized for any kind of fraud, tax fraud, and so forth, including ransom, as we could see recently. So the idea that you can let go and become very, very significant at a global level, an instrument which is totally and directly contradictory with what the international community engaged over the last 30 years, in particular with the Financial Action Task Force, namely try to combat precisely money laundering, financing of terrorism, and so forth. So here we are an anomaly. Now, as I said, in any case, it's not a currency. So on top of these anomalies that exist because there is no rules and regulation in most countries of the world, not in France, because there is now a regulation here in this country, but in most countries of the world, there is absolutely no regulation for investors. But on top of that, of course, the BIS, as you said, is the central bank of central banks of the world and cannot let the currency qualification being utilized. It's not a currency.
And yet
at least most of them are not currency.
And yet the BIS is in favor of virtual currencies sponsored by central banks? Is it the case of if you can't beat them, join them?
The BIS is strongly in favor of digital currencies that would be issued by central banks. These would be real currencies with a central bank caring for the value of that currency and utilizing all the benefits, as it was just said, and I fully share that view, of the technology which is behind, which is extraordinarily, I would say, wonderful and must be utilized, but must be utilized in a fair fashion, of course, not to evade rules and regulations at a global level.
A Bitcoin that's put out by a central bank, is it a cryptocurrency?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Central banks are definitely working on this kind of subject. And I would say the most advanced country nowadays is definitely China, who is now performing tests, real-life tests, where people actually are able to use digital yuan for making purchases, for making day-to-day activities, and even for paying salaries. But it's a totally different subject because digital currency created by a central bank basically has the same value of the standard currency. If we ever have a digital euro, well, a digital euro will have the same value as an euro. But basically, that's not why people actually buy Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Nowadays, as we said before, we can more talk about digital assets rather than digital currencies.
Yeah, but I still don't understand. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The difference between digital assets and digital currencies here. Because for me, an asset is something that represents a good, a product, a financial service. Whereas Bitcoin only represents itself. It's just a computer program that you've described.
Absolutely.
It doesn't represent any value in the real economy, does it?
It represents a very, very valuable technology. It represents the whole innovation that actually created Bitcoin. Like I said before, Bitcoin.
It sounds more like a video game, excuse me, than it does a tangible asset, to borrow that word, to the real economy.
Can we consider that Google is a tangible asset? It's just computer programs which run on machines. You know what I mean? So the real value...
No, it's a service. You give your personal data each time you look something up, and in exchange, it gives you research.
Exactly, just like Bitcoin is also a service which allows you to actually exchange value on a day-to-day basis with anyone on the planet. So the real value of Bitcoin, once again, is it's a very innovative technology. And that's basically why people are interested in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, such as Ethereum, which was quoted before. I would even say that Ethereum is even more innovative than Bitcoin because it allows us to do more things and to provide very interesting financial services nowadays, which are really being developed.
But the volatility, and we heard both Jean-Claude Trichet and Susanna Streeter mention it, when an Elon Musk talks up a cryptocurrency and then talks it down, lots of people lose a lot of money. Is this founded in any real economy, again, any kind of science, or is this just pure speculation?
I would say that most of the people who actually are interested in Bitcoin are interested in the investment opportunity that Bitcoin represents. And I would say that, yes, on the short term, of course, there is a lot of volatility. And unfortunately, indeed, so many people have actually lost money. But over on the long term, Bitcoin has represented a very interesting proposal. Just to give you an example, Bitcoin is the single most profitable asset over the 2010 to 2020 years. It has risen by 900,000%. There's not one single asset on.
What goes up must come down, though.
Depends. It has successfully shown that over the past 12 years, it has represented a tremendous investment opportunity.
Susanna Streeter, what do the good folks at Hargreave Lansdowne think?
Well, we certainly think that investors really should only be dabbling in crypto assets right at the fringes of their investments and should really make sure that they have a core of much more stable investments before they start playing around at the edges. Certainly, there is going to be a place at the table for crypto assets in the future. And I think the thought that Facebook could get in on the act with its own crypto asset really did make central bankers sit up and take notice and accelerate those proposals for central bank digital currencies. And I do think that in the future, I mean, Manuel talked about just how rapid Bitcoin is at the moment. Ethereum is more rapid, but central bank digital currencies will be even faster, no doubt. So consumers will be attracted by that faster payment system. Of course, the payments world is in a state of flux. And that is why we're seeing so much interest in all of these new technologies that can create new options for payments going forward. The problem is, we don't know what yet is over the horizon. So you may be investing in the latest technology right now, but a few years down the line, with developments being so rapid, there could be something else that comes along. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it sounds like it's listening to you. It sounds like a world of uncertainty right now, where if we're bombarded with all these new products, where do you go?
Well, absolutely. It is a world of uncertainty. And you certainly shouldn't be going to social media influencers or getting all of your detail from chat rooms, from people who've got in and buying coins and tokens at a really low price and are trying to push them up. Because, of course, they will make money, but those people who come along a little bit later won't. So, for example, if you invested in mid-April in Bitcoin, now you've lost half its value, even though over the past year it's still 3 times the amount that it was. So it's very hard to navigate through this world, which is why crypto assets should be seen as extremely risky. And the Basel Committee, in some of those recommendations that it put forward, suggested that they should be 100% backed by financial buffers in any kind of investment in crypto assets, because they simply are too risky. And I do think as well that once you get central bank digital currencies being launched, it is going to cause further volatility, because people still will probably trust the central bank over a decentralized network, even though that is why it's considered valuable.
All right, when we come back, we're going to pick up on that point. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're looking at cryptocurrency being at a crossroads. Cryptocurrency, which is, according to Jean-Claude Trichet, who's with us, former president of the European Central Bank, not a currency, but an asset. We're also talking about it with Manuel Valente, Director of Research and Analysis at Coin House. And from Bristol in England, Susanna Streeter, Senior Investment and Markets Analyst at investment platform Hargreaves Lansdowne. Yeah, it was over the weekend that China announced that it was tightening the screws on cryptocurrency mining. Thomas Waterhouse has more on that.
At midnight local time on Sunday, the plug was pulled in Sichuan. The power supply to all of the energy-guzzling crypto mines in the Chinese province was cut. That development came after 26 mines were ordered to close in the southwestern pocket on Friday. Authorities also ordered local governments to conduct a dragnet-style investigation to locate and shut mines, with the Global Times newspaper reporting that last week's closures have resulted in the shutting down of over 90% of the country's Bitcoin mining capacity. The move comes after China's State Council revealed last month that it would be tightening the screws on the whole industry. And this Monday, the central bank announced that it had recently convened a meeting with other financial institutions, including the payment platform Alipay, and had urged them to get tougher to enforce the government's ban.
Speculative trading in virtual currencies roils economic and financial order, spawns the risk of criminal activity such as illegal asset transfers and money laundering, and endangers people's wealth.
As well as the financial risks linked to cryptocurrency, this broadened crackdown has also been triggered by environmental concerns, with crypto mining expected to use 0.6% of the world's total electricity production this year. The crackdown also paves the way for China to bring in its own digital currency, allowing the central government to better monitor transactions. Tests of that currency began back in March.
Jean-Claude Trichet, you agree that China did the right thing by closing down the...
I trust that in any case, we need absolute transparency. So as long as these transactions are not transparent, they are paving the way for any kind of criminal activity. It's unacceptable. It is not considered appropriate at an international level since 30 years. So it's absurd that we let this flourishing at the level, again, of the financial sphere. That being said, the cryptocurrencies, the real cryptocurrencies, will be the currencies issued by central banks. And there are 57, I think, or 58 central banks in the world that are working actively on that front. And they are backed by the BIS, as we said already. So we really have real cryptocurrencies that are coming.
Are you sure? Because we're seeing this feeling of populism, if you will, or call it what you want. People saying that you need to democratize finance. What do those central bankers know? We saw with, for instance, the Robinhood trading app, how little investors almost turned it into something militant.
That's totally different, in my opinion.
It's the same spirit, though, for some people.
No, there is the challenging of the way market operates, the ups and downs on the stock exchange and so forth. So we are in the domain of assets and not of currency. As regards currency, I really trust that all the benefits from the new technology could be utilized very wisely by central banks, and there you will have a real currency, namely a currency which is a good store of value, as is or are today the present currency that are not yet digital. And so again, I'm very confident that the central bank will produce that. Now, you will still have probably crypto assets, as we said, and they present in a way, the negative judgment could be these are casino tables. So it goes up, and down. You will let people continue to play, as they can play, after all, on commodities or on gold. So it's a special table. But it has to be transparent. And as long as it is not transparent, it creates, in my opinion, an enormous problem at the level of the international community as a whole.
And again, I ask you the question about China. Yeah. An estimated 2/3 of the Bitcoin mined in China. That's an estimation. Why are they now changing their stance?
I think that, first of all, they consider that it is not appropriate at the moment they are launching their own cryptocurrency to have the flourishing of this currency. They were practicing benign neglect up to now. Now they do not want to continue. Now, that being said, this mining is so costly that it proves that the Bitcoin themselves have a failure. And there are other crypto assets or potential crypto assets that have not this cost in terms of energy consumption, which is absolutely gigantic, and again, totally contrary to what we try to do at a global level in terms of climate change and so forth.
Susanna Streeter, your thoughts on which way it's going now in that regards. When you hear Jean-Claude Trichet talk about how the cryptocurrencies of the future will be the ones issued by central banks, Is that the way you see it as well? Will people go along with that?
I think they will be becoming more dominant in the future, certainly. But what is interesting with all of these developments is that we're moving towards kind of cashless societies. And that raises some privacy concerns because cash means that, you spend it, your purchase can't be traced. And people like to have that anonymity. If you're moving towards central bank digital currencies, all your transactions can be easily blocked, traced and followed on the blockchain of transactions. And so you will lose, to some extent, that privacy of being able to buy what you want with nobody knowing. And that is why I think there still will be a room at the table for alternative crypto assets. Now, it could be said, of course, that will mean that those assets are used by the criminal underworld more and more. But it could also be said that it gives citizens freedom to spend money how they want to without feeling that every purchase will be tracked and analysed.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it, Susanna? Because on the one hand, in what you're saying is that why should the government or Mark Zuckerberg, if Facebook puts out its own cryptocurrency that works, know everything I do? And on the other hand, you're like, hey, if you don't want the government to know what you're doing, isn't it to dodge tax?
Yes, well, that is definitely what some people would say and how some people perceive it. But also others would say, I simply want to maintain a level of privacy over my life. And that is going to be a difficult issue, I think, to address as more societies move towards being cashless, more central bank digital currencies are launched. There could be a kind of a third way, partnerships with issuers of stable coins, for example, pegged to a fiat currency. And that might be an avenue to go down. But again, it could present similar issues. So I do think this whole question still needs to be addressed as well, of course, the energy use. But there is a movement towards, instead of proof of work, the mining, proof of stake, which is where transactions are verified through essentially possessing the currencies or the assets. And that is accelerating. But again, a huge amount of work needs to be done.
Yeah, it's a question of how you regulate it then. Do you like the idea put forth by Jean-Claude Trichet that the future of coin house will be in trading central bank?
I don't think so.
Virtual?
Because
he is specialized in assets and not in currencies.
We really have to, and I agree with Mr. Trichet, that we need to make a real distinction between cryptocurrencies, and especially cryptocurrencies created by central banks, and crypto assets. Because a cryptocurrency, its only use will be to actually make transactions, to go to Amazon or to any other e-commerce website and actually to do transactions. While a crypto asset is an investment product. And the bank Goldman Sachs has recently recognized officially that they consider nowadays that crypto assets are a new asset class. And people...
Even though they're used for money laundering and...
That's less and less. And actually...
Less and less?
Absolutely. There was a report by Interpol recently.
I mean, isn't that how they paid for the Colonial Pipeline hack, is through...
Yes, obviously, there are still problems. There are still illegal uses of cryptocurrencies. And of course, there are still illegal uses of US dollars and euros. But we really think that the regulation that we see happening nowadays is going to try to solve these problems.
Jean-Claude Trichet.
Manuel, I trust, is following, of course, the French rules. And the French rules are trying to protect against these criminal activities. But if I can go back to what we said, and Suzanne in particular, I would say at the present moment, if I'm well informed, there is no central bank, apart perhaps from Sweden, but the other central banks that are envisaging to have a digital currency will all continue to issue their notes. So this idea that you must still have the possibility of having your own activity without being registered on the, I would say, core of a central bank or whatever institution or authority will remain. The notes will continue to have circulation even with the cryptocurrency issued by the central bank.
All right, so what to make then of El Salvador? 2 decades ago, the Central American nation that made the dollar its currency, passing legislation at the start of this month that established a government trust fund to guarantee the automatic convertibility of Bitcoin to dollars. In other words, Bitcoin is currency. I'm sorry, not an asset, but currency. Jean-Claude Trichet in El Salvador. Smart move or not?
No, I don't think it's a smart move at all. And I don't think it's pertinent and I would say consequential, personally.
Manuel Vante, you agree?
I would say that I think that the move by El Salvador is a kind of attempt to try to move the economy of the country away from the dollar, which is very much preeminent within their economy. I don't know if that move is going to be successful. Definitely, it's a first worldwide. We don't quite know how they actually want to convert their economy to Bitcoin, if that's what they want.
But again, we're talking about it not as an asset, but a currency here.
Yes, and I definitely agree once again on the point that Bitcoin is extremely volatile. So if you really want to base the whole economy of a country on an asset that can take 10 or 15% over a day or lose it the next day, then it's a very risky move, of course.
All right. With writing in the Financial Times, Jemima Kelly talks about the principle of any Ponzi scheme. Those who get in at the start must continuously draw in new believers to keep the whole thing going, she writes. Exhibit A, this is the Twitter feed of Anthony Pompliano. He's a Bitcoin trader and enthusiast. He's got nearly 1 million followers on Twitter. He writes, every bull market has to indoctrinate the new class of crypto enthusiasts. Volatility is the name of the game. He embraces it. In her article, Kelly writes that the Bitcoin Brigade, as she puts it, even has its own song.
Don't tell me your dollar's a little bit stronger when it's built by inflation and war. Join Buffett and Munger, 'cause I'm hodling longer. Move along, I've got value to store. Have fun staying poor. The aggregate is spending.
Again, it gets back to what we were talking about earlier. You said that the Robin Hood phenomenon isn't related, but it sure sounds like it, that there is this sort of populist push here.
Yeah, at the very beginning, clearly, this idea of being totally independent, totally guaranteed against any kind of institution by pure anonymity has been at the core of the venture. But all that being said, clearly we are in fact, and I don't know whether Manuel will agree with that, but it is really a casino. It depends entirely on whether you have investors. Of course, when Goldman Sachs says it's a new class, a new asset class, it triggers a lot of new investment of a big portfolio in the world deciding to embark on this particular asset class because it's not correlated with the other asset classes and so forth. But what I am sure of is at a time it will come and you will not have new buyers. And at that moment, really, the value has a risk, a considerable risk to collapse. But you should know that. It should be advertised. It should be advertised that it is really a high volatility asset, as some others are. And it seems to me that the main problem with these crypto assets is that the investors are not perhaps sufficiently warned against the risk that goes with their investments.
Susanna Streeter, you're a former journalist, and this is an important point that's being brought up because in preparing for this show, we read a lot of stories and from reputable news outlets, and none of these questions are being asked. The only question that was being asked is, is the value going to go up or down? Is that something that struck you as well?
Absolutely. And I do believe it is like gambling. It is like a casino. And it's being fueled by speculation on social media, whirling around and people being enticed in and being told, the only way is up. In fact, some of the coins are advertised as it'll take you to the moon. I mean, that's exactly what the advertising surrounding them on some of these sites are. And it's very difficult at the moment because of current regulations to clamp down on some of these claims because they aren't within the sphere of regulatory bodies at the moment. And yes, what we're seeing, and I do think is related to the GameStop saga that we had earlier on in the year, this kind of attitude of we can beat the system. We've built up piles of money during the pandemic. We've got money to spend. It's the era of cheap money. Let's do it and try and game the system and send these crypto assets soaring as we have in the same way with meme stocks.
And we had, after the financial crisis of 2008, we had Occupy Wall Street. Now we've got Bitcoin and GameStop. What does that tell you, Susanna?
I think it is like a digital version of Occupy Wall Street. I think a lot of the participants in this have seen huge asset price rises in terms of housing, in terms of stocks and shares, and they haven't really had a slice of the pie. And I think over the past years, the stock market has reached heady heights. There has been more and more people who've wanted to also make a quick buck. And that is what you're seeing. That is what's fueling this. And also this feeling that there's a new system on its way and they're part of it.
Manuel Valente, full disclosure, during confinement, one of the things that I've personally have missed is being able to go to the track from time to time and see the horses. Do you consider this like going to the horse races?
Absolutely not. Like I said before, I really think that the real value of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is the technology that fuels them. And like I said, it's really something that was never created before. A real asset which actually doesn't rely on any centralized organization. That's the first time that it was actually created, and that was made possible by the advent of the internet. And I would say that something...
So there's no one to answer to when things go wrong.
There's no one to answer it. The people have the whole responsibility. However, we do, as people who actually run businesses related to cryptocurrencies and crypto assets, we do have a responsibility. And there are ongoing creations of regulations worldwide. I mean, France was one of the first countries worldwide to actually create a regulation on the companies related to crypto assets. And all the points, which are valid points, which have been told today about money laundering and financing terrorism, or not showing people the risks that come with investment in cryptocurrencies. Those have been addressed already in France. In 2019, there was a law called Law Pacte in France, which actually created a status for companies dealing with crypto assets. It imposes us a lot of obligations in terms of respecting money laundering laws and so on, and it also protects the investors from most of the risk on the market.
Jean-Claude Trichet, the European Central Bank, when it launched the euro, we had the 500 euro note. The ECB realized after a while that this was simply a tool for money launderers and drug dealers and whatever. It took till 2014 to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And when you heard earlier Susanna talking about the fact that we're heading towards this cashless society now, we're thinking, great. It means the end of we're talking about the end of tax havens now almost. We're trying to come to set of new rules globally so that we crack down on those who don't pay their fair share.
It's absolutely true that.
But now with Bitcoin and its like, is it one step forward, two steps backwards?
No, I mean that depends, of course, on what will be decided by the various central banks. I take for granted, and we all agree on that we cannot let those crypto assets, cryptocurrency, you name it, as obscure, anonymous, and paving the way for transactions that are criminal. So we all agree on that. It has to be dealt with. As regards the
and
notes,
untraceable.
pardon me?
As untraceable as those 500 euro notes that no longer exist.
Yeah. For the notes themselves, we were at the creation of the euro following the tradition of many countries. And you had at least three countries that had very big notes, not in the other countries. Now we are progressively joining some kind of consensus. As you know, in the US, you have only $100, and you have also a strict control of, I would say, the more than $10,000 cash. I would say that you have in your wallet. So this is the trend. It's absolutely clear. There is a trend, which is a very, very strong one, and progressively we all are joining more or less that trend. That does not mean that you do not have still the notes, and the notes are by definition anonymous. That's clear. That was
Bitcoin.
To respond to the remark of Suzanne. As regards the Bitcoin, what the Central Bank of Europe is envisaging is not to have full anonymity. And that the possibility, even if they consider they are more reliable as central bank, as authority, which is not commercial, they are more reliable to keep the data secret, as secret as possible.
Find a way to keep it secret.
But they consider, of course,
But not full anonymity.
They cannot close their eyes if there are transactions that are criminal. That's as simple as that.
Right.
But they consider they would be more reliable than a commercial bank. Right or wrong. I mean, it is their belief.
Trying to strike the right balance. We're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately. Jean-Claude Trichet, I want to thank you. I want to thank Manuel Valente. I want to thank Susanna Streeter for being with us from Bristol. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.
Pleasure.